Yo, 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 what is going on, CoD Familia? It is your boy BN, aka Mr. Kingdom Builder, and today I wanted to cover something that I had been wanting to for a couple days. However, felt that after taking some time to really think about everything that was posted as a explanation announcement in the official COD Discord from parts of the last update 1.0.11 Everything Must Go, I'm finally ready to talk about it, and this is going to be pretty insightful, right? This is something that has been pretty controversial within the community for really, I would say, these three main points. There's others as well, but these three have been really big, and I know I initially praised, as I still do, their team for coming out and giving an explanation on why. And before I dive into each 3 points, and even just to giving you my feedback on the fact that they came out with an explanation, let me go ahead and get my good stuff out of the way, which is that if you enjoy the content, make sure you sub, like, ring the notification bell. Of course, if you want to come and join to be a part of our conversation, hit up the Discord. You can find a link to that in the pinned comment description right down below. Okay, the reason why I do applaud their team for coming out with an explanation, I might have said this in a previous video, is that it is not very often that these things happen where you will have a dev team slash staff, excuse my nose, a lot of congestion going on today, is they just typically don't do that. You know, I rarely see a developer that'll come out and actually give you an explanation and what in their mind are their justifications for why they're doing something the way they are. So I appreciate that, right? I can always respect when a team comes out and says, hey, this is our feelings from our perspective on what we're seeing, and why we think this change is important to make for the community, for the health of the game. But now let's move on to these 3 points. So the first one being Dark Chest Combat Alliance gift cap. It is important to note that this is specifically a cap only on dark chests, which are generated from dark guards, right? So let me just give you an example here, right? So this is what they are, right? The dark chests. These that you can see, you must defeat Darkling guards before you can open a dark chest, right? Dark chests require dark keys to open. So I just wanted to show that because I thought it was really important to distinguish, so that way no one's thinking, oh my gosh, it's 100% cap on everything. No, right? And it even says in there, right, any purchases that are made, right, and I'll even show you that here. If you look at the notes, there's even a line there. I think we have to scroll pretty low here. But you'll be able to see where it says, oh, sorry, I have to actually go up to Alliance, right? It says, added a limit to gifts. There is no limit to the amount of Alliance gifts received from Alliance members buying bundles at the market, right? So essentially, right, still unlimited on purchases. The thing I'm going to comment on here, though, however, is that, hey, why am I opening weird stuff? There we go. Okay. The thing that I find interesting is that if you ultimately think about it, right? Let's break this down a little bit. Probably one of the few reasons, or probably one of the perspectives on why the change came in is, I would assume, because the developers were noticing or maybe hinting at, well, we're seeing maybe alliances that are either kicking out inactive players to bring in active players so that way they can essentially unlock more dark chests, or they were putting quotas on their players in the alliances to try and generate the highest amount of dark chests that they could per day, right? Regardless of whatever they did, remember that it is the alliance's choice and that alliance's management's choice on what they do with their alliance. If players do not like playing in that environment, don't play in that alliance. In my opinion, that perspective supersedes any limitations that the game can put on the players. This is one of those things where this type of a change to me, and there's another element here that I'm going to dive into, but this type of change to me is something where it's too much oversight. it's too much micromanaging from the developers on this area. I'm not saying that it's not good for the developers to step in at certain times, but for this specific instance, this is just not something that I think was the right play, because it feels, let me say that it feels to me that it did not come from a place of understanding, right? Understanding of the player psychology within a game, or within this game, I should say. So the second one here is that you're allowing, well, you have to think about it, right? What is more free-to-play friendly? The fact that a player can go out and attack Darkling guards and then generate dark chests for the Alliance? Or do they have to go and make purchases to generate chests for their Alliance? Well, that's pretty obvious, right? If you're free-to-play, you don't spend money. So by you limiting dark chests, you're basically limiting the free-to-play's reach and investment, and probably more so their return on investment within an Alliance. And now this does end up leaning a little bit more towards the kind of pay to win, the slash the spenders, when it comes to, again, let me be very clear, this one area within an Alliance. So, and I apologize, I'm a little passionate here right now, is that again then starts teetering you away from being a little bit more free-to-play friendly. Now, I don't think that this is let me be overly clear. This is not what I would consider to be, oh my god, right, because Boss said now this is less free-to-play friendly. Now the game is not free-to-play friendly. No one's saying that. This game is still very free-to-play friendly. I made a whole video about how free-to-play friendly this game is over others to those points. But this is something that does, again, scale that back a little bit for me. And I just don't understand it. I don't know why something like this would have been changed. Now let's get to the third point that I just thought of right now on this topic, is that players are going to do what they do, right? Meaning that if you set a limit of 100, what's to stop an Alliance from now saying, okay, guys, we need to have a guarantee of hitting 100 chests a day. And if we're not hitting 100 chests a day, we're going to start removing people. We're going to bring in people to help us consistently and constantly hit 100 chests a day. Why? Because the bar has been lowered so much that it should be effortless to hit 100 chests a day. And then let's say you're in an Alliance that isn't hitting 100 chests a day. What's to stop that Alliance from setting a quota at, hey, we need to now be hitting 100 chests a day? So, I understand why the developers did it if it falls under one of those two and or both of the examples that I gave. But I just think that it was a little bit too stringent, and it almost felt like too soon for them to implement something like this, and really to expand on. I just don't think it was needed. Instead, what I personally think would have been a nice trial solution step approach, if again, now remember, we don't know the data behind this. That's something I would love to see. What's the data? What are you seeing? Why exactly do you think setting this to 100 chests a day is important? And what are you hoping to accomplish from it? Because in this entire thing, there's nothing that really specifically details out what they are hoping for. Right? It says they want to avoid the situation where Alliance members are repeatedly removed from their alliances for the sake of claiming more spoils. Okay. But why do you think setting it to 100 is going to improve that situation? Like that part isn't really detailed here. And part of it I really feel is because, and this is something I'm going to make a separate video on, and I'm only going to briefly mention something here about it because, again, it really is worthy of its own video, is that sometimes when something is created by the creator, right, and I'll give you an explanation. For those of you that have seen the movie Ready Player One, fantastic movie, right? And one of the lines in the movie, and again, I'm not going to try and paraphrase, or I'm sorry, I'm not going to try and quote it direct, but I'll paraphrase, is that essentially this creator creates this world, and the world evolves and turns into something that is beyond what the creator thought it would be, right? Beyond the original vision for it. And then a level of adaptation, a level of self-awareness, recognition that this thing that was created is now no longer in the original vision. And so now my vision should adapt and try to complement, right, support what this thing is turning into, which still, again, could, there still could be core elements there. It doesn't mean that the whole thing has completely changed. It just means that it's evolved. It's added on from the foundation, and maybe different pillars were built on it compared to maybe what the creator thought the eventual pillars would be. And so that, I think, is something really important to look at, is that from the developer standpoint, you can come out and you can create this fantastic product. But it doesn't mean that the product is going to always operate in the way that you think it will. And that, to me, is one of the glorious and probably amazing things about Kingdom Builders, is that you have to kind of really look at this as a sandbox game. I don't necessarily look at this and say, oh, well, the creators are coming out with a specific idea in mind. I mean, you have to kind of think about, what's actually happening in game. Well, you have thousands of people that are getting placed into a sandbox, which is a kingdom map, and then they're basically told, figure it out, right? Think about it. There's no guidelines. There's no tutorials on how to interact with other alliances, how to do diplomacy, how to communicate with other human beings that are in-game, how to, tactically and strategically fight alliances, right? Why recommendations on maybe what layers to go to because it'll give you advantages in PvP. Like, there's nothing like that. And so this is why, and again, I don't want to go down this rabbit hole because I could make a bunch of videos on this, but I just wanted to give you guys a little bit of context there, right? Give you a little bit of eye peeling behind the BN mind of my own curtain. Okay, number 2. So number 2 for me, honorary membership adjustment. This essentially is reducing VIP items within the VIP store and then reducing the daily reward that you get for legendary tokens or legendary sculptures, if you will. And so if we go in-game, I'll show you this. So we'll go to the VIP store. First, let's do the perks, right? So I think they said at 10 is, let me double check here, right? So it's at 10, I think they basically scaled from 2 to 1. So essentially what it is now is that I believe it's you start getting 1 legendary token, and then someone told me that at 15 it's 2. Oh yeah, and you can see here, right? So you can see 2, and then if I scroll back here, you can see it's 1, right? So from VIP 14 to, what is it, 8? You get 1 legendary token, and then you get 2 at 15. For this part, I am a little mixed. On one hand, if I'm looking at it from the dev perspective, okay, I get it. Spenders could literally do nothing but just spend however much. They could literally spend probably enough in one day, right? I have to assume that there's no limit on the amount of gem purchases you can make. I don't think there is, but let me double check because it could be wrong. So, I don't know if you can just buy some flat gems. Okay, cool, yeah. So maybe you can't just buy flat gems. Okay, so maybe there is somewhat of a light limit then-ish on that. Maybe I'm just going to the wrong place and I just have no idea. But anyways, I digress. The overall point is that as a spender, you're going to reach VIP 15 way faster than a free-to-play player. It's not even close. And so because you're reaching that, you're essentially generating more gold heads, right, or more gold legendary hero tokens in this game than a free-to-play player is, because you were able to kind of hit that max out point way faster and way earlier than they were. And so from the dev perspective, it's probably, okay, well, we don't necessarily want, I almost wonder if they're trying to take the approach of, we want the spenders to try and be as active. It's almost like they want the spenders to acquire these materials through activity rather than solely through spending. And I don't think that it's probably ever going to get to that point, but it almost feels like that's what they're trying to do with this. So even though you may consider it to be, for example, it might be better to give buff percentages, right? If you're going to take away, and this is my thing, if you're going to take away a legendary a legendary token, right? From starting at VIP 8 up to 15, then my thing would be, okay, well, if you're going to do that, compensate with extra buffs. Compensate with maybe higher RSSs, right? Maybe add 1% or 3 to 5%, right, on the respective buffs throughout, so it scales to VIP 15. So by the time you get to 15, as an example, right, maybe overall gather speed is 35%. Maybe research and building speed is 25%. Maybe train speed is 25%. Maybe gold production, and these ones are 60 to 70%, maybe 75%. Right? So, I mean, you're getting my point, right? Like, don't make it astronomical, but scale it appropriately. And like, for example, maybe these attacks, right? Maybe this is 6%. Maybe heal speed's 15% or 12.5, or something like that, where you're compensating to some degree for taking away something, right? And you're not just saying, oh, well, we're going to take this away, but then we're just going to send you in-game compensation. There are ways that you can still, kind of balance it out, right? With your checks and balances. If you're going to take something away, you kind of give something back. And so to me, that's something I think. Now, yeah, do I actually think that doing this is more of a, I'm trying to find my words here, because I'll say this: if they add more events in the game that will allow for you to generate these legendary items, then I will say yes, this is a win for free to play. If they do not add in more events that will allow for you to generate more legendary hero tokens, then I would say it's not really a win for free to play, and it's actually more of a win slightly for spenders, just because, again, you still could get to a point where if you spend enough to max to VIP 15, remember, you were able to get to legendary sculpts. I think it might have been like around 10 or 11, like VIP 10 or 11, maybe. I can't recall exactly, but it was somewhere around there, like 11 plus or minus 1. And as free to play, that was actually somewhat attainable, right, in a decent-ish amount of time. But now you've done, so like it went 1, 2, 3. But now you're basically going 1, and then it's 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, all the way to the end, and then it's 2. So you don't really have anything in the middle, which means that those that decide to spend money and just boost to up to 15, you have to now kind of think of it where, like, the scaling is a lot more now because you've taken out the middle ground. Before, you could actually have a free-to-play player get to 1 and then get to 2, even if it took them a lot longer to get to 3, and you still were at least getting something from it. And so now it just feels like it's scaled more. Anyway, so that's on that one end. Now let's get to the store portion. So the store portion, I have the two things here. They ended up reducing basic CP recovery, and they reduced the amount of epics, epic hero tokens, right? So CP recovery, and I'll show you. I think it was 50 to 20, and I think it was 20 to 7. Yeah, that's what it was. So they got reduced, and then 12k is gold, and then for the epic hero tokens, which is here, these are 180 gems. So what I will say here is that I am conflicted on this one, because, to be honest, as a free-to-play, I was always able to max out. I mean, this is like basic AP, basic CP recovery. I was always able to max these out every refresh. Why? Because I actively played. When it comes to epic hero tokens, because these cost a premium currency, I mean, the argument could be made that this one is a little bit more of a kind of a nerf to spenders, right? So it's probably a little bit more free-to-play friendly, because typical free-to-play usually would be spending at least I believe, their gems on VIP. I mean, even though the legendary nerf happened, I still would say spend your gems on VIP, just because of the passive bonuses and buffs compared to the short-term rewards that you can get, right? The long-term will scale more efficiently in the long game. And so, yeah, again, that's how I feel about these. Now, again, the CP one to me, I think, is... Because the thing with the CP is that you want to be able to buy CP, right? Because the idea is you want to be able to try and max out as many heroes as you can. right? Like with CP, it just allows you to go out there and fight a lot more on the PvE side. And so the more you're able to level up your heroes and get more resources, because of how every season resets, it actually gives you more opportunities, more options on hero pairings, on being able to work in this hero or that hero, more usage that you'll be able to get out from all the heroes. By reducing the amount of CP, it just therefore limits in however much the ability now for maybe before I was able to go ahead and over the period of a season, maybe I was able to, effectively max out, 10 heroes. And now maybe I can only max out 7, right? And I'm talking like max hero level, like XP level, ideally. And that's kind of what that does, because again, you need the extra CP if you want to get more experience points for your heroes, and then obviously other resources, but really from more of just like a max level perspective on your hero. And so that's something to consider, is that could also limit the amount of PvP or just PvP options that are done, and sometimes that just may not necessarily allow for a player to feel as good about their PvP choices compared to when they were able to gather a lot more. Now, again, I don't know what the max amount of items is in Rock as far as how many action point items you can hit. But, I just think for this one, it really felt... I don't know. I just wish there was more of an explanation, I guess, is probably the best one that I could say. Yeah. It says on here, right, and I understand. I think part of this is true, where they say the power gap between... lords could be severely widened, right, where they're purchasing it too much. It's just, the thing is that I think it was more about the epic hero tokens, that is, because of the gems cost, more so than the command points. I think the command points, realistically, what you're thinking, that's 12K. I mean, even if you just did the math real quick on that, and you do, 12,000 times 50, that's 600K. I mean, that's pretty attainable, from a free-to-play player, right, especially as you start getting higher and higher levels. It just becomes easier because you're generating more resources per day from having the 25 buildings, and right, with obviously having higher skills, you're already kind of able to have a higher gather rate when a new season starts. I mean, it's just a lot of these things become easier when you get to the next seasons when it comes to general gathering. So, again, I just don't see, I don't know why, right? I mean, 50 to 20 is a big jump. Why not do 50 to 40? Why not do 50 to 35? Right? I mean, they basically cut it by more than half, right? By 60%. So, yeah. I think doing it a little bit, try doing 50 to 40. See how that plays out, right? Explain the reasoning. And then, okay, let that run another season. Let that run 2 seasons. Okay, maybe it's a little better. Maybe we need to go a little lower. Okay, let's go 40 to 35, right? Let's try to find this happy medium. I just think 50 to 20 is just such a drastic jump. And oftentimes, it's good to prep the player base. By what I mean by that is explain beforehand, right? Here's another example. Why don't they do polls? Right? Here's a genius idea for the dev team. Why don't you guys send a system mail out and you run it as a poll? And you do an in-game poll from players where you explain the reasoning, and then you list out the options. Don't just ask a very simple question, right? Like a 15, 20-word question. Provide an explanation, present arguments on both sides, and then you ask the community. Just Jimmy Neutron brain blast. Mind blown right there. I mean, talk about one of the best things that you can do, right? And then you just simply integrate a poll into your system mails, and then you have everyone give you a poll, and if they want, they can submit feedback or something to that effect, right? And have it be easy. Allow for them to take the poll from the system mail. Don't make them go and do something else, right? If you want to get the highest amount of feedback submissions, of poll submissions, you have to make the process for giving that poll response as easy as possible, which means you have to reduce the amount of steps that someone has to take to go and submit a poll. So yeah, and maybe you use that as a segue to eventually where you allow for polls to be done via alliance mails, right? You can be like, oh hey, we tested this. Look at this, I guess I got ideas galore over here. Okay, now let's get to number 3. Introducing daily healing capacity. Now, I'm going to be honest. I actually thought daily healing capacity was just always a thing. Right? And some people were going to be like, but, because the thing is that you were always generating heals from your hospital passively. I just thought that there was a cap on it the entire time. I'm just going to be honest. So the reason I say that is that my view doesn't really change on this, to be honest, that much. Right? It says, this change is designed to avoid the extreme situation where too many wounded units are created in a single day, or the unsustainable tactic of relying too much on a single unit and neglecting group coordination. When the number of wounded units exceeds the cap, the excessive will be healed the next day rather than left to die. Please rest assured. Now, you can increase this cap, right, based on your policies, where you could increase your daily free healing and then your daily free resource healing. And so I'm going to be honest, I don't know, because like I said, my thought was there just was always a cap. And even if you go, and again, we'll just show this off in-game. So if I go in-game to my healing here, I can see like daily total healing. I just always felt that I always saw this. And then resource healing, daily healing, right? Daily healing available today. So, and then you can see it just gives you some information there. So again, for me, I think the explanation really is probably the thing I really just have something more to say about than I think the generalness of the cap. So I'll say this. Let me start off before this, right, with the cap. Putting a cap in general, if anything, limits the spender. It just does, because the spender cannot, if there was no healing cap, then the spender could just heal all day long. So this is really more of a spender cap than it is a free-to-play cap. Because, yeah, sure, the free-to-play could probably heal more than whatever the cap is, but they just can't sustain that for as long a period of time as a spender can. Again, right, that's just how I feel in general about that. And then when we get to the explanation part where they say the change is designed to avoid extreme situations where too many wounded units are created in a single day, to be fair, this to me just isn't enough of an explanation, and I'll explain why. If you're a free-to-play or a spender, whoever you are, you could be fighting, and then let me just add on here, right, where it says, or the unsustainable tactic of relying too much on a single unit and neglecting group coordination. You could be the most organized and most coordinated alliance in the game, and you could just have a bunch of die-hard PvP fighters, and all they do is fight all day, every day, 24/7, like 7-Eleven, get your easy breezy, beautiful cover girl on, and they end up falling into the exact same healing capacity strifes that this change was meant to curve, which basically means you didn't really solve anything on that front. And again, this isn't meant to be said in a negative way or a slight. It's just in that example, it doesn't, it's not applicable, right? It doesn't really solve that situation. And the reason I say that is because the game itself is so great when it comes to its, like, again, if I'm just looking at how the game is on its PvP, most of you know I praise Call of Dragons because they're doing things on the PvP front that no other game is doing right now that has as much potential or, again, is as polished as Call of Dragons is. I mean, ranged PvP in Call of Dragons has just changed the landscape immediately, and now this is what I expect kingdom builders to play. So from now on, if your kingdom builder, in my opinion, doesn't have ranged PvP, I'm probably, or at least doesn't have the ability to do that like Call of Dragons does, to some degree, I'm probably just not even going to touch it, because now Call of Dragons has set the bar for me. And so when I look at this explanation, to me it just isn't enough. I'm not saying that the explanation is bad. I'm saying that the explanation doesn't solve completely what they are trying to address and solve with the explanation itself. And so, again, that's the thing, right, is that, and I'm going to say, and I'm going to go back and say this, and I hope this really hits home for some people, is that when they say things like the unsustainable tactic of relying too much on a single unit and neglecting group coordination, well, what are you doing in game, right? And this is a serious question. This isn't a jab or like, I gotcha. What is the game? You have to look at what the game is, right? As a developer, there is nothing in the game right now that promotes group coordination, that promotes not going out there and soloing. And I'll give you an example. Like I was saying earlier in the video, there's nothing in the game that is a tutorial or a walkthrough or a guidebook or anything that says, hey, here are some tips on how to go about conducting PvP in our game. So respectfully, and this is what I would consider to be professional constructive criticism, is that this to me is a contradiction. You cannot say, right, or the unsustainable tactic of relying too much on a single unit or neglecting group coordination when the game itself does not give us any resources or educate/teach us to do anything different. So if anything, I just hope that they take that to heart. Again, I love the game. And I think it's important, right? I mean, and this is my view as well, right? When you have relationships with people, right? Your real homies, the people that really love you, the people that really care about you, they'll be honest with you and they'll tell you the truth. And hopefully they can do it from a respectable and professional way where they can so eloquently explain something and break something down to you where they only have the utmost care for what they're saying. And there's no ill intent, there's no negativity, there's no hate, there's no anger. And I hope that, if anything, throughout this video, that should be the overarching, I guess, objective for me. Anytime I put my all into a game, is I would never provide a form of feedback or suggestion or criticism in any type of an ill-intended way. That's just not my style. People that know me know that I don't like talking like that. I don't approach myself, or I don't say things in that way, right? It's more from, right, I feel I just personally have a lot of knowledge. I have a lot of experience in these games because I've played multiple of them, and I've done them from the player level to the top kind of high-end management level, if you will, of managing kingdoms in my approach. And so being able to have a wide range and a diverse background on being involved in almost arguably probably every area that you could participate in within these types of games, and playing multiple of them across the genre, I would like to believe that I just have a unique perspective, and I'm sure others do as well. I'm not trying to say mine is uniquer more than another, let me be clear. But I do hope that this is something that, if anything, those of you can connect with. Maybe you can see it from where I'm coming from, regardless if you agree or you disagree. And anyways, with that being said, that's it for me. I wasn't expecting for this to be a 30-minute video, but this is something really important, and I hope, if anything, most of you, and for those watching, can at least feel that passion, feel that importance coming from me in wanting to do the best job that I can to explain how I'm viewing the changes and the explanation coming from them on these 3 points. And yeah, so that's it. I wish I had more water because I might go on for another minute or two. But yeah, I'm just going to end it there. That's it for me. As always, right, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Let me know in the comments down below on anything I touched on, right? I would really love to hear how any of you view what I've said, how you view the changes. Has me taking time to explain what I have maybe changed your view? Or has it reinforced your view? I'd love to hear. So let me know. That's it for me as always. Until next time, I will catch you later.